Well, with our old Boy Scout hatchet restored, it's time for a new cover. I found this pattern for a cover on the internet. I can't remember exactly where I found it, but as soon as I do, I will put a link in the description below. But that's the basic pattern for the original Boy Scout hatchet cover. So let's go ahead and get started. As with any pattern, the first thing we're going to have to do is trace it out on some nice leather. So I found these couple scraps in my leather bin, and they seem to fit pretty well. So let's go ahead and get them traced out and get them all cut out. Pretty simple. As you can see, went ahead and cut out both sides of the pattern, making sure that the grain that we want is on the correct side. Let's keep on moving on. To shore everything up, I'm going to go ahead and put that first rivet in right there. That'll keep everything good and square as I'm moving on with the project and starting the other sewing aspects of it. Okay, as you can see on the pattern, it's time to go ahead and mark out the holes where all those little rivet holes are going to need to be. So we'll go ahead and transfer that to the leather now. Go ahead and get those punched. And as you can see here in this pattern, there's an opening, and that's going to be for the handle. So you got to remember that you're not going to be stitching during that section of the leather. Keeping the leather aligned and square as two pieces of leather can be, we went ahead and punched all the holes that we're going to need, and they went through both sections of the leather. So there we go. Let's keep moving on. To keep my stitches aligned correctly, I went ahead and used a leather stitching tool that marks the pattern for the stitches, so I can keep them in a straight line and keep them right along the edge there where I want them. It's not necessary, but I had the tool, so I went ahead and used it. Time for some leather stitching. If you've never used a leather stitching awl, it is actually one of the most practical bushcraft or outdoor items you can possibly own for seaming objects together. Super easy to use. All it is a basic lock stitch. As you can see, you push the needle through the leather, create a loop, and then feed the wax line back through that little loop. And then you go ahead and hold it tight and pull the needle back out and move on to the next stitching hole. It really doesn't get any easier than this. This is basic sewing, truly at its most basic. Just move from one pre-marked hole to the next, create the little loop, feed the wax line through the loop, and then go ahead and hold it tight and pull it back through, and that's what creates the stitch. And with all those holes pre-marked, everything stays in a nice straight line. You're not going to have any jagged or random stitches. That's the one thing I really like about using a stitch marking tool for leather work. So just work right through those rivet holes as well, because the rivets are actually just going to hold those stitches even tighter. So there it is. Just keep on working. Let's move forward. Well, let's take a look at our leather stitching work. Looks pretty good. I'm not a professional, so I think it looks good. That's the other side there. Tied off a little knot there at the end. See if I can get a close-up for you. Worked out pretty well. Next, we went ahead and set all of our rivets. As you can see, I went ahead and used brass rivets. I think they look a little bit better than the silver rivets for brown leather. So that's the style that we went with. They all set pretty well. I'm real happy with the way that's turned out so far. Time to test fit our Boy Scout camping hatchet. Well, here we go. The Boy Scout camping hatchet seems to fit pretty well. You can see where the handle comes through, where I was talking about earlier. There's the back end of the hatchet. And we're still going to have to put our snap on that flap there. So we'll go ahead and mark that, punch a hole in it, and get our snap all set up. Should be a piece of cake. Here's the snap set we're going to use. Very simple, very basic. Pick this up at any leather crafting store or hobby store, and there's the anvil and the snap setter. And let's go ahead and get those holes punched. The holes are all punched up and aligned. Now all we got to do is set our brand new snaps. Our snaps are set. Making sure we lined up everything correctly. I think it looks pretty good there so far. Time to test fit the hatchet again. It appears that our hatchet fits nice and snug. The leather's going to work loose a little bit over time as it ages and it gets, wet or used or just broke in basically. As you can see on the back, I didn't put any belt loops like in the original Boy Scout camping hatchet sheath. I might put that in later. I might not. I'm actually going to use this more as I'm going to kind of tuck it in my belt more than actually use a belt loop on the axe head like that. I don't like the way that those ride on my hip. So either way, I think it turned out pretty good. I'll give you another look at it here real quick. You can see the edge work. I did a little burnishing on it, but not much. I actually like the raw edge. So, it's a personal choice kind of thing. You can burnish it. You can leave it raw like this is here. It doesn't really matter. I was going for something very primitive, very original as I can make for the axe head sheath there. But now that this one's done, let me briefly show you one we made for our Lowe's camping hatchet. And here it is. I made it in the same style. Little reverse, I put the flap on the other side so that this one can ride on my other hip if I wanted it to. As you can see, I didn't put a belt loop on the back of this one yet either. Still don't know if I'll do that or not. Exact same style of closure system. I went with the black leather with the silver rivets, and there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it's been useful to you.